screw their sport. Let's play our own game.
Hi everyone, I'm Spiro with Newsbud, joined with the founder and editor of Newsbud, Cabal Edmonds, for this week's edition of Newsbud's Roundtable. Cabal, this is going to be an interesting show as we have two great guests this week. Joining us today is writer and senior producer for Newsbud, Kurt Nimmo, who has been very active both during the election and post-election with his coverage. We're also joined by Newsbud contributor James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, who has also been very active on the elective coverage, especially post-election. Cabal, you haven't been so active with your election coverage.
That's true. We have been the most inactive people as a website, and that was a pledge I had committed to, and I stuck with it. But I have been enjoying the articles, analysis that Kurt has been publishing both at his website, and we will have the link to Kurt Nimmo's own website, but also on the articles that he has been publishing and writing for us at Newsbud. And I have been following James's interesting perspective and take, and again, as usual, is original and it was very interesting. So with that in mind, I just wanted us to have this discussion because I see this synergy there. There are some differences, there are some similarities, but starting with you, Kurt, you were covering your analysis, were out there during the elections, and then you started immediately after the elections with the data you were gathering, publishing these articles on Donald Trump. Do we call him president since he hasn't been inaugurated? Because lately people have been picking on me. How come you say President Erdogan but you say Obama? I have no idea why I've been doing it. It's not because I regard one my president, the other one not. So should we just go ahead and refer to him as
President-elect.
That's too long. Donald Trump cabinet and his selection, and with that particular angle, were you surprised, Kurt?
Yes, actually, I was surprised. I was under the impression, and I totally expected the establishment to put Hillary Clinton in there. That just went to show me that they are not as much in control of the election process as I thought they were.
Now that's interesting. Because I was not surprised. Maybe some of the names would have been different. The names, there are so many names. There are these buckets, and I think it's a mixed buckets for me. The well-known uber neoliberals and uber neocons, and with a lot of commonality that you can't really distinguish one from another. But I was not surprised. I mean, what were you expecting?
I was expecting the establishment to put Hillary Clinton in there. What they did to Bernie Sanders, you can see how they can fix elections. But it was so close that I figured, and in the past they've done this, they've rigged elections when they were this close. So I figured they would do that, but apparently they're not in control as much as I thought they were.
Okay, well, let me put it this way, and this is the devil's advocate, and I'll pose this for both of you here. Well, I studied psychology. I by no means I'm an expert in psychology, but I remember very similar climate during the end of Bush administration and with Obama election. And it was this people again being surprised, and the same motto was played. Okay, mainstream media portrayed him as anti-establishment, and actually they had this pseudo kind of conflict with him, not very complimentary. Of course, the race played a major factor because a lot of people believed since he's not particular color, he's black, not white or half black or whatever it is, it's going to be different. You know, like we see these cards being played. Oh, because she is a woman, establishment, they don't want Hillary to get elected because somebody's purple. And that actually, I call that reverse psychology, meaning people have been angry. They have not been satisfied. And that's putting it mildly. They have been angry. They've had it with the establishment. Corruption, all the waste, fraud, abuse, criminal deeds by the government. So the fact that people have been asking, wanting anti-establishment candidate, or how would I put it, underdog candidate, that factor has remained constant. Now, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the establishment, and they do a lot of studying all the marketing and the sales and the psychology of marketing, and say people are in this position, and they were right before Obama got elected. So why don't we get both candidates are our candidates, but the one we really want will show that one as the one we don't like, so that candidate will win. I mean, if I'm the establishment, if I were to be the establishment, I would say the reverse psychology worked with Obama. Why not use it with Donald Trump? So my question is, could this, especially seeing Donald Trump's cabinet and what you have been writing, Kurt, was this a successful implementation of reverse psychology method with the majority, and saying, like Pavlovian dog, you do this and this and this, and people are expected to do this and this and this? Kurt?
Yeah, it's a rerun on Obama. It actually is. I mean, they pulled basically the same stunt this time around by pandering to people that are, like you said, tired of the government, tired of the corruption, and in my case, tired of the wars. They just pulled this reverse psychology thing that you're talking about, had people vote for him. And it was a close election. I mean, she won the popular vote, supposedly. And I think that he'll do fine by them. I mean, he's a little eccentric, and he's an outlier, but he's gonna play ball with them, albeit with his eccentric, style.
James.
Well, you certainly won't get any argument from me that this isn't a boon for various parts of the establishment, because as we see, I mean, let's be fair to the Trump supporters out there who are going to say, well, he hasn't picked the cabinet yet. Let's wait to see who he picks. Well, I haven't heard a name floated yet that I don't think is utterly reprehensible. But this just came over the news wires. They're reaching out to Romney as potential Secretary of State. Yay. Well, better than Bolton or someone like that, or Giuliani. But still, I mean, it's just a cesspool. So drain the swamp and fill it up with more of the cesspool is apparently the modus operandi for the incoming Trump team. But again, hey, let's wait. Let's see what the picks actually are, and then we'll pick them apart once they're actually named. But again, I haven't seen anything at all that really says anything anti-establishment to me. And of course, we do know the chief of staff is going to be the chair of the RNC. So I just can't fathom how people are still believing the drain the swamp type of stuff. But I think you're right. I didn't see as much of the mainstream bias against Obama as I see that has been completely obvious against Trump. I mean, all of the coverage is pro-Hillary. Hillary is the greatest. Hillary's manna from heaven. Trump is evil incarnate. I didn't see that type of coverage against Obama, but I think you're right that the sense, the spirit is the exact same. It's the hope and change. I call it Trump and change. It's the exact same ethos that's being tapped into, but this time on the right side of the pendulum rather than on the left side, just a mirror image. And it's exceptionally effective. It was effective in 2008, and it was exceptionally effective in 2016. There's a lot to say on it politically, but I think the most interesting aspects of this are not the political aspects. It is, for one, it is the exposure in the minds of a lot of the people who, up until this point, still have not even ventured into alternative media territory, suddenly discovering the extent of mainstream media bias. That's interesting. I really do see the alternative media really beginning to eclipse the mainstream, the establishment, the corporate, the mouthpiece media in this selection cycle. And I can't imagine that's part of the establishment's plan. But then again, at some point, I think there does have to be some sort of confrontation. And whatever happens, I think the mainstream narrative, the ability for mainstream media to set the narrative, has been at least diminished, if not fatally wounded. And that has to be for the good.
Well, here I have to turn to Spiro here. I didn't vote again, I didn't vote. And my husband went out and voted, and he said that was his civic duty. So, I mean, 25 years, I have given up in that department. But Spiro, I said, I'm not voting, and you said you were not going to vote. And we decided to just paint. Our office has been under construction. So we spent the day painting, and that went on till like 10, 11 o'clock. But actually, we had a bet going on, and I said, Trump is going to win. And you said, absolutely not. I think Hillary is going to win. So tell us why you didn't vote and what made you make that bet that you lost painfully. And you owe me a few things, but a few things, not one thing, but to engage in such a losing bet.
Well, as Kurt stated earlier, if you look throughout history, corruption is everywhere. If you can bet on it, it can be rigged. Whether it's the World Series that goes extra innings, and they can stretch each advertisement that they're going to be able to promote and plug in and get every last cent they can just milk out of, whether it's a sporting event or an election or whatever. I just don't personally hold much faith in this current system, in this current model, when we can look throughout history and see how easy it is to be manipulated and changed and rigged. And if you also look at, like Corbett was saying about the media bias and everything, and they were obviously promoting the Clinton camp big time, and bashing Trump. Now, Sibel pointed out an interesting point about the reverse psychology aspect of it, and how they're promoting Trump as being anti-establishment. I did think that they were going to give it to Clinton, but at the same time, there was that slight bit of doubt where I looked back at where Clinton ran in the past against Obama, and they put her as kind of like a formidable opponent to run against, and everyone's freaked out. I mean, so much of the Clinton past is documented as well, and a lot of that was coming out, and did that play a part in it? I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, personally, I don't think you get to the position and the stature and the power that Trump has, and to be on that stage without playing ball in the system, without being a part of that same establishment that he is saying that he's gonna change or whatever he's gonna do when he takes office. So I personally have every election or selection cycle that comes up. We have seen it time and time again. It's going to be continual wars, the never-ending wars, and the expansion of the wars, and the expansion of the police state, and the encroachment on civil liberties. I mean, this is the road we've been going down. Is this candidate going to be able to change all of that? I'm not going to make another bet, and if I do, I'm not going to bet for it.
The point is that with Trump, he's such a ne'er-do-well, and also he's so politically, inexperienced that the cabinet that he picks is going to be running his administration. Of course, that's been the case with most of these guys for decades. They get the CFR and the Trilateral Commission in there, and they call all the shots. So that's basically what he's doing right now, is he's putting together a cabinet that's going to run it. He's got a lot of neocons in there. Like you said, Romney's probably going to be, my God, you said what, the Secretary of State, was it, that you heard? I mean, so it doesn't matter, because the same persons, the same people are being used, to run the government. And, so he's kind of irrelevant in a way. Trump's kind of irrelevant. He's just a figurehead. And I've thought this all along, that the presidents really don't have a whole lot of power. It's the people behind them that are running the show, so.
But how about another? I don't know why I keep thinking in terms of psychology this evening for this debate. But James, where does it come from? I know it's all about conditioning, of centuries of conditioning, but the notion that people, 99% or whatever is the exact percentage, by the way, close to half of the population, voting age population, didn't vote. Okay, so I was not among the minority. So there are many people like me out there who are saying, I'm not going to legitimize the system, because that whole process itself, legitimizing the system, I don't care who is running there. But this notion, James, that one person, okay, knowing that there is this huge system, including the deep state, the shadow government, you want to call it, ginormous bureaucracy, okay? And with the United States, all these different branches, where does it come from, this notion that one man, one woman, okay, one this color person or that one person is going to come and woohoo, things are going to get better, and that person is going to set this stuff, it's going to be applied by this corrupt bureaucracy, and things are going to get better. Where does it come from, that notion of placing one's future or hope or what they expect to see or what they expect to change in one person, in one individual? Let's say even Donald Trump is the greatest person, or whoever it is, Smith is the greatest person. Just the fact that they're going and thinking this person is going to change all the stuff. He's going to put the bad guys in jail. The good people are going to be awarded, and I mean, we're going to be seeing this amazing change. Where does it come from, James?
Well, I guess if you're a believer in set and immutable human nature, you would just say, well, it's just the primate nature of humanity, looking always to the leader of the tribe, the leader of the pack, to set the rules and agenda for everyone. Or if you're a believer in everything being socially conditioned, well, then it's a product of the education system and the fact that we're mostly taught the great man theory of history, and I'm sure American students are probably taught about the presidents and what they accomplished and what they did as if they were the ones acting and the only ones making these agendas come to fruition. You learn about Wilson, but you don't learn about Colonel Edward House. So you have a skewed version of what history is and how it functions and who the real players are. And as a result, you believe that a single individual is going to change the system. So either way, it seems that there is a psychological factor at play here. And the question is, can we replace that? I guess, again, if you're a believer in set and immutable human nature, then nope, we are just primates and we just function as looking towards the leader of the pack, the tribe, the group to set the agenda for us. If you believe that we can be educated out of such outdated and, well, fundamentally useless concepts, then perhaps we are part of the vanguard that is educating people on the real way that history functions and the fact that this doesn't change anything. I wonder, my question is, does each and every political generation that comes up have to get their political heart broken before they even start to question that system? And when that occurs, is that even a lasting heartbreak? I mean, look at the Obama hope and change phenomenon, which I don't think there's probably a few, but not very many people will say, in the end, oh, yes, he lived up to his legacy. Oh, it was all so great. No, millions and millions and millions and millions of people who voted for this hope and change. He's not Bush. This is going to be so much better. Had their political heart broken. And then 8 years later got energized for voting for Clinton because at least she's better than Trump. Is that really that? And then now if Trump comes in and does exactly as it seems like he's going to do, appoint a bunch of establishment insiders and can continue on with the Pax Americana, the War Americana, the Bella Americana, then in 8 years, all the Trump voters just vote for the next Republican candidate they throw out because it'll be better than the next Democrat candidate they throw out? I mean, is there a sense that there are more people who are waking up to this scam at all? Or do people just fall into it every single time? And again, I don't know if that's a matter of conditioning or whether it's a matter of human nature, whether certain people are more apt to understand and see this trick, and whether there is a certain group of people that will just never, ever wake up to it. I am obviously at least a little bit optimistic, or I wouldn't be here talking and doing this stuff, but I'm not 100% optimistic. I don't think it's certainly not going to change overnight. And to a certain extent, I think people need to be fooled and fooled again and fooled again and fooled again until they learn better.
Kurt, one question, and that is, in general, and that your writing reflects that as well, why is it that everybody else, not that I'm saying they are better or they were better, been excluded? This whole notion of third party or fourth party or the fifth party or the eighth party here in the United States. I mean, what is it that I know you didn't write about it, and very few people have been writing about other people. I can't even think of many names. Okay, Gary Johnson is the guy. He's the libertarian. And then people started some very small faction talking about Jill Stein. But what is it that, like, as an author or analyst, even as this whole race, this nonsense, this $6 billion plus waste of entertainment, that even you don't find worthy to analyze or write about, whether it is, I don't know, Jill Stein or Gary Johnson or XYZ, by saying that they just disregard. It's so quickly disregarded, the notion of third or fourth or fifth or eighth party. And that becomes some kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is for people who believe in election, which I don't. In this system, I don't. But let's say for those people who believe in it, and why is it so conditioned hard there that nobody wants to write or even give it a chance, saying, nah, it's not possible. We saw it with Ron Paul. In 2008, that was the only time actually I went and I wrote down a name, because where I lived before I could. And I put Ron Paul because that was a case I could maybe make sense. Not that I believe he was going to change the system. Everything was going to be different. But even him, with that level of support, it was like, no, I have to stick with one of the two ways. I have to stick with the Republican Party because that's the way it is in this nation. Well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy right there. You keep saying that's the way it is in this country. It is going to be the way in this country. So as someone who's been analyzing and writing about this, I would like to get your take why we always, everyone uniformly say, well, they don't matter because they're not going to matter because third party, fourth party, fifth party people are irrelevant. Whether it's mainstream media, but also the alternative media going into this ignorance mode with the other existence, at least the existence of other voices. Kurt?
Well, you'll see that Gary Johnson did, and both Jill Stein did relatively well considering their low numbers of 5-4%. So, the point is, we're conditioned to believe that this is political system that we have is the end-all and be-all of what we need to do politically. And we're brainwashed, and it's like James said, we're a herd. We follow the leaders, and that's precisely what's going on. But I think that's changing this time. I think that people are so disillusioned with the economy and culture and the political system that they're ready for something new. It might take another 4 years, but I see that a third party. This nation has got a long history of alternative parties going back to the Whigs and all the other, political parties beginning at from the start of the nation. And I think that increasingly people are ready to vote or cast their vote for an alternative candidate. I don't know if the nation will last that long. The economy is ready to topple over the edge. So I guess we'll see. And it's going to be interesting what Trump does. It's going to be more of the same. We have a Republican Congress now, and so it's just going to be sailing along doing the same thing. But people are getting tired of it, and I think they're ready for a change. The corporate media's got quite a hold on the people. The propaganda is pretty strong, but I think that's changing, and alternative media is doing it. Increasingly and incrementally, people are becoming educated on how this political system is corrupt. So I think as we go forward, as they like to say, I think we can see some positive change, but I'm kind of impatient, to tell you the truth.
Speaking of impatience, there's another point I want to pose a question to James, but also to Spiro here, because I noticed that you were nodding when you had this very good optimistic video about the episode. I don't know if it was your latest, James, or it was the one before that, when you were saying that for those people who think the change is going to come with the election, the revolution has been happening. And you were pointing out to several different areas. I know you didn't have a chance to point out to everything because we all try to keep our videos short. And you were interpreting these as the signs of positive change and revolution taking place. And I noticed you nodding here. And for example, when you were talking about 3D printing in your latest episode, James, and business to business, individual to individual transactions, in terms of, we are becoming less, or people who are determined to be less reliable, to rely less on the system. And the less we rely on the system, the more independent become, the more then we're going to be seeing the macro picture. I mean, that seems to be the pathway to the change. But I want both of you to tell our viewers about this optimism, or the signs of optimism you're observing with the internet, with the change in technology, and with some of these examples that you presented and you agree with, Spiro. And then I want to come back and I'm going to inject my impatience and negativism, and hopefully we'll come out of this show with kind of a nice balance in position. James, let's start with you first.
Well, all right. Well, as you pointed out in my recent video, I was pointing to the fact that the real revolution is already underway. And these are, clearly revolutionary times. We clearly have widespread, massive discontent amongst the entire electorate, to use that term. And I hate to use that term because it's to speak in the statist language, but the electorate is clearly unhappy with the system. That's clearly what Sanders was about. That's clearly what the Trump vote is about. That's clearly what Not My President and Drain the Swamp and all of this political rhetoric that's swirling around right now is about. But to me, this is not a political change that is happening. The political change that is happening is just a reflection of the underlying societal changes that are happening, which actually, I believe themselves are largely determined by technological changes that are happening. Rather than the great man view of history, I think there's a much better argument to be made for the technological view of history and the way that things like the printing press or the steam engine can change politics in ways that are more fundamental than anything like that. And we are living through such times, obviously, as we speak. Everyone has their little tracking slave device in their pocket, which for all the horrible tracking and everything that it does, has also opened up ways of communication that were completely impossible to even imagine even a decade ago, let alone a couple of decades ago. And I put it into context by my own personal example. I remember vividly back when I was in the government indoctrination camps as a child in Canada, I was I had to go through those types of things. I'm sure everyone probably experienced when they were going through the system. What are you going to be when you grow up? Here's your project. You're going to have to go and research that industry and find out, how you're going to make it and blah, 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 and talk to the career counselor and da, da, da. So at the time, I'm like, well, I like writing. I want to be a writer. So, okay. And so I interviewed my friend's mom, my mom's friend, who had written some book of poetry or something for some tiny little Canadian press or whatever. And even at the time, I realized all of this is so stupid. I'm not actually learning how to make my way as a writer. This isn't going to be useful for me. And now I think of it from my perspective now. Flash forward 20 years. Yeah, I guess I'm writing, but that's not. What is my career? What am I? I'm a podcaster? Is that a career? I don't even know. I don't know how to describe this. I don't know how to define it. And 20 years ago, it would have been literally unthinkable. I literally could not have imagined that I would be sitting in Japan podcasting from my living room as a career. It's totally unthinkable. And to me, that's a wonderful thing. That's an amazing thing. The fact that things can change so quickly and so drastically, so completely that you couldn't even plan it out, even if you wanted to, can be a wonderful thing and can be an opportunity. What is the corollary of that? The corollary is that these people that we think we are electing to rule over and manage the economy in the world, that is the greatest trick that the ruling oligarchy has ever pulled, is to make you believe that you actually need them to steward over everything and manage everything and micromanage everything. The point is not just that they're corrupt. The point is not just that it's always the most evil, sick, twisted psychopaths that get into these positions of power. It's that even if they were angels descended from heaven to steward over everything, they could not manage this. It's because the relations that are going on between people that are facilitated by technologies that couldn't even be envisioned a couple of decades ago cannot be managed by anyone, should not be managed by anyone. So I think the expression of what is happening right now in this changing societal landscape that's being facilitated by new technologies and new ways of communicating and